You could go absolutely nuts if you don't stay organized.
And it's funny too, because we'll physically have a lot of tabs open, but mentally I know me and Steph also have a lot of tabs open in our brain trying to figure out what's next, what are we doing?
In this day and age, most of the best marketing, I'd say, is inbound marketing. What advice do you have to someone first getting started in the marketing industry?
Ooh, this is interesting. Okay. Don't do it.
You got to find some beauty in the chaos, and you also have to find some, I guess, method to the madness too. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Misfit Marketers podcast. We're now at, episode 5, which is awesome.
These things. Right.
Yeah. I'm Steph Kaufman.
And I'm Adam Lopez.
And welcome to the show. Adam was feeling a little under the weather one week, and he was still going at it. So I'm feeling a little under the weather, and I'm still going at it. So here we are.
No days off. It shows our dedication to you guys, the fans, of course.
It's gonna make us sound like we're like those like hustle culture people,
right?
But anyhow, so we're here, and yeah, I've got a few questions rounded up from some of our audience. So yeah, I'll just dive right in, Adam. And I really like this question.
I'm ready for it.
What advice do you have to someone first getting started in the marketing industry?
Ooh, this is interesting. Okay. Don't do it. No, I'm kidding. I feel like, we talk about this a little bit in previous episodes, but I mean, if anything, the advice I would give is just to like kind of trust your gut and trust your creative direction. And also either that being one of the first pieces of advice, or B, it's like find a niche, right? Like if you want to get into, if you're just getting into this, right? It's either like double down on design, or double down on web building, or double down on, C++, or double down on, Salesforce, something, right? Because it'll be easier for you, in my opinion, in my experience, easier to find clients if you're kind of like hyper focused on a particular situation, because I know when Steph and I were coming up, I don't know if Steph will share the sentiment, but it was a lot more generalistic, it was like a lot more general, we had to do design and we had to do funnel building and everything under the sun. But now I've realized, as we've been in this game for a very long time, that kind of hyper-focused aspect, I think, is a great place to go nowadays and be able to get clients, kind of based on your niche. What about you, Steph?
I mean, I'll piggyback off that a bit. I think you're absolutely correct, Adam, in that it's important to find a niche. And if you find something that you really like, that you're good at, like you said, Adam, to double down on that. At the same time, though, I think it can be very beneficial to have a general understanding, not be a jack of all trades necessarily, and not necessarily be a generalist, but to have an understanding of different like operations within marketing and different roles and responsibilities within marketing, because you're going to have to interact with those different roles at a certain point. So it's important to have that general understanding. So even if you are so it's like, even if you are really diving into one thing, say if you are diving into web design or web development or what have you, it's still really important to like have an understanding of, say, social media marketing and how that could come into play. Not necessarily, you don't have to go full force and be an expert at everything, but I do think it still is important to have a deeper understanding, or even, I don't know, like to know what it means to be a growth marketer. Because one thing that I noticed, like when I was first getting into marketing, is that it was really overwhelming, the amount of different positions there were, and being able to kind of differentiate what those all even mean. So yeah, I think having just that understanding is important.
Yeah, no, I agree with Steph totally. I mean, there's something to be said about, the aspect of not being such a generalist. There's also an aspect of kind of being able to understand how all these kind of bits and pieces work together. That was kind of what I think, Steph, maybe you were kind of getting at. It's like knowing that relationship.
In a lot less words, yeah, you said it a lot more succinctly.
Right. She's absolutely correct. The thing is, when you're getting into marketing too, it's something where it could be very overwhelming, because you can do it could go so many directions, right? Like I always have this statement that I tell clients and stuff, that like marketing is a lot like quantifiable art, right? Whether you're writing great copy or creating great graphics or creating great video, short form, long form, whatever it is, the court of public opinion almost kind of tells you what's working or not, right? But if you trust your gut, you're not going to get it right every time. And I'm sure me and Steph have not gotten it right every time, but it's something where, I think that aspect of really trying to trust your own creative direction is also paramount importance.
And another thing too, take courses. You don't have to go back to school, but there's a lot of really great free resources out there that I encourage you to tap into. For example, if you want to have a deeper understanding of, digital advertising, Google Ads on their own platform, they have education built right in, and you can get certifications, which is wonderful. And I'm not necessarily going to say, especially in this competitive market, whether or not it's going to get you a job, but it certainly doesn't hurt, and it's something you can use to bolster your resume. Facebook has it, Meta has their own built-in courses on there, and you could get certifications. Another great resource is HubSpot. I am a huge HubSpot fangirl. They have great resources on learning inbound marketing, which I behold anybody in marketing, no matter what sort of space of marketing you're in, to dive into the understanding of inbound and how that works, because in this day and age, most of the best marketing, I'd say, is inbound marketing. So yeah, that's kind of just my little tidbit of advice there.
No, I totally agree.
All right. So another question, and this actually came from the same person. So sort of jumping
Nice.
off of this, how do you stay organized?
Oh, this is interesting. Oh, do you want to start this one, Steph? Because you're probably a bit more organized than I am, so I'll let you kick it off. Like,
Which is funny because in like I'd say in my everyday life, I am so not organized. So it's like it's one of those skill sets that I feel like I had to learn to keep my sanity as a marketer. But yeah, in order to stay organized, I mean, the first thing, this probably won't be the last time you'll hear me say it, I am so beholden to my calendar. I literally have like my Google Calendar like color coded. If there's something that's really, really important, say it's like a client meeting or something, I have that in red. It's bright bold red, so I can never overlook it, right? Like I don't just see it as just the other stuff in blue that I'm like,
yeah,
yeah,
right,
it's, yeah, I could, I
right.
could skip that if I have to. So there's that. Even like my stuff in my personal life, I'll even put that in my calendar, just
Same.
just to take mental notes and keep that organized. The other thing, of course, is to use like a project management and a productivity tool. Like ClickUp is what Adam and I have been using, but there's also Asana, which tends to be a little bit simpler and more user friendly to kind of set up. ClickUp has been a huge rabbit hole for me, trying to kind of create different workflows and keep that organized. But it is a great tool if you have, I guess, the time or the resources to do so. But yeah, I'd say like those are my two biggest things, and just in sticking to it and creating a process, and again, really sticking to that process. So that way things don't just like go amok.
Right, right. And even to piggyback what Steph was saying, like the ClickUp aspect, like there are people, me and Steph were looking at this earlier, when we first started this, so we're like, there are ClickUp experts out there who all they do is ClickUp, and these folks they're paid very handsomely, but they know their stuff inside and out, upside and down, so it's like,
Yeah, like 25K to get
yeah,
this built out
so,
for your organization.
right. So maybe get into ClickUp, folks. If you
Yeah.
get into it, maybe get into ClickUp. There's definitely money there.
Hey, yeah. Yeah, if
But
you're
it's
big on project management and like
right,
processes and automation and stuff, not a bad
right.
idea.
Right. But to Steph's point too, I live and die by the Google Calendar as well. It's like I have my personal one, that I have the one that we use for Upbeat. And they're always both open together. Like you'd have both calendars kind of simultaneously going at the same time. And like Steph said, it also helps too if you're going to build the team out, stuff like Slack, things like that always help. So you're not doing like WhatsApp or text messages or things like that. Building this stuff out, it's something that Steph and I had gone through more so Steph than myself, because Steph is a phenomenal organizer. Getting all that stuff under one roof, whether it be like not even under like one particular platform, but getting everything kind of centralized and like, okay, we're going to use Slack, we're going to use ClickUp, we're going to use what have you. That's a task in itself. It's something that definitely shouldn't be overlooked when it comes to stay organized, because organization is efficiency at the end of the day, right? So if you're not organized, you're not optimizing how efficient you can be.
And I think that even ties into advice when first starting. It's like, yeah, keep yourself organized, come up with those processes. And of course, don't be afraid to deviate and grow and be better at that. But like, if something works, definitely stick with it. Because thing with marketing, especially if you were in the agency world, you could go absolutely nuts if you don't stay organized. Your head's going to be spinning. You're literally and also metaphorically have a million tabs open at once. And that really is kind of the name of the game with marketing. Like even right now, I'm looking at like my monitor. It's over here. I have a million tabs open. But it's you got to find some beauty in the chaos, and you also have to find some, I guess, method to the madness too.
Right. And it's funny too, because like we'll physically have a lot of tabs open, but mentally, I know me and Steph also have a lot of tabs open in our brain, trying to figure out what's next. What are we doing? But yeah, no, it is important. It is important to to stay organized, I believe.
So I'm going to piggyback off this, Adam. What are some things that you could do to be more organized?
Really, it's something. I mean, it's really a time management game. I'm going to go back to that. It's like even in your personal life, when it comes to personal professional overlap, it's like you have to manage your time well. Because it's like there's a lot of stuff where like a lot of times you're meetings, a lot of times you're not though, right? So it's like if you say, hey, I'm going to finish this project at this point, like hit your deadlines. That's always great. Manage that time properly. And it's a talent that takes years to develop, but I don't know anyone who's 100% an expert at time management, right? People say they are, right? But it's like life happens, right?
So I am so not an expert at time management.
But life happens, so it's like it's also different when you're looking at something internally versus something externally, right? It's like if Steph and I have a call together, and we have a half hour afterwards, we'll be like, hey, can we move this? I'm like, I'm stuck doing this, I'm stuck doing that. It's like, yeah, sure. But externally, obviously, that's where you really got to make sure that you're managing your time properly, because you don't want to waste this client's time. You don't want to push meetings on them, which Steph and I rarely, almost never do. I don't think we've done it once, honestly, pushed a client meeting, but it's something where, I think time management is absolutely key. What about you, Steph?
I'd say that is the big one. Like you definitely hit the nail on the head. I dive very, very deep into things. I get really excited about stuff and I get extremely hyper focused on things. The problem, and I think anybody that like struggles with ADHD could probably resonate with this one, is that you get hyper focused on something and maybe in some way it has some importance, but what you end up doing is you're spending hours and hours in something that is not necessarily the top priority, and you're allowing other things to fall to the wayside. And then I end up having to spend double, triple the amount of time that I really should working, because I'm putting so much effort into something that maybe I could have, like Adam, like you love to say, which is so true, sometimes good enough is good enough.
Right, exactly.
And I think this is something that any like creative and marketer, anyone that's in like, especially a field like marketing where it's creative and it's business oriented, probably more people in this world than not that kind of struggle with that, where it's like you want things to be this beautiful, perfect thing, which is great. I think it's wonderful to like have that sense of like pride in your work, but also is it really the most important thing?
Right.
Sometimes it's okay to just have something be good enough to come back to it later if you have extra time and then not be scrambling trying to meet deadlines. So, yeah.
Right. No, Steph, you're absolutely right. And the good enough is good enough thing kind of came from a situation where I was interviewing folks. I think I was interviewing freelancers or something. And I think our CEO or something at the time was like, Adam, here's an interview question. Like, I want you to ask him. And I was like, okay, great. Like, lay it on me. I like never interviewed folks before. This was like years ago. And the question he wanted me to ask was, is it better to be good and on time or perfect and late? And I thought that was a great question, and the answer, if you guys ever get this question, is good and on time, because if you're late, it reverberates through the entire project system, right? So it's like, we got to get it perfect, but like, again, like Steph was saying, there's two sides to this. If you're doing it internally and you want to go down a rabbit hole, totally fine, right? Of course, this is mine and Steph's passion. So we find ourselves down rabbit holes sometimes, but it's like where it's client facing, you want to make sure you hit those deadlines. And that's where the term good enough is good enough comes from, because if you're perfect and late, then the client loses faith in you, the whole project gets derailed. So there's definitely kind of two sides to that coin for sure.
This is why I'm glad I asked you that question about like things to be better at, because it's so true for me too. Is just time management. Ours are on kind of different, like they're different spectrums, but it's like two sides of the same coin. At the end of the day, it's time management.
Right. Which is easier said than done. So I mean, we're all working on it every day. It's
an ongoing process, and especially when you're working in an environment where like it is a team environment, right? Which marketing virtually always and should always be. There's always going to be that challenge there of one managing their own time while also kind of working with people that are dealing with their own time management. And I think like Adam and I, it's like we're just getting better at it every single day, which is great.
Right.
I'd say so.
Yeah, right. I totally agree.
Okay. This one, it just came in from actually just a day ago. I'm not sure exactly what they mean by this, but I think it's a good question to kind of explore. So, how do you create a dynamic marketing approach to get more interpersonal with the demographic you're working with that allows for organic growth? I feel like it's kind of a bit of a loaded question. So
that's a lot.
It's a lot to unpack there. Yeah.
I mean, oh my God, I feel like this is a Jeopardy question.
So dynamic marketing approach. Basically, let me say what I think.
Yeah, lay it on me, please. Help I can with this question.
I think what it's ultimately saying in less words is like, how do you create sort of that like one-to-one kind of dynamic? Say if it's with like a larger, it's with one single persona, but how do you make it so it's feels more personalized?
Yeah, no,
That's
that's what
kind of what I took it as. But again, yeah, I have to
I
go
think
back and
you're
be
right.
like, what?
I know. I think you're right. That's $1 million question, $1 billion question, right? For some firms, it's like getting that personalization. Also depends on the size of the persona. I'm sure Steph will agree with this. Like if the persona is massive, if you're going after like every person aged, every male, every female, 18 to 35. It's like, how do you make that personal? That's very difficult, right? Because you don't know what you don't know about folks, right? It's like if we're trying to do something that's like a huge like B2C situation, like just totally consumer facing, the consumer mindset and the key demo, 18 to 25 or 18 to 35 is wildly diverse, right? So it's like, how do you make it personal at that point? Say you have a big sample size or a big like demographic you want to go after, like let's say males, 25 to 35, for example, right? So it's something where I think it's aspect of breaking that down even further and kind of be like, okay, like what's a location? How can I like speak to their location? How can I speak to socioeconomic class? How can I speak to, position at work? How can I speak to, married, unmarried, things like that? It's like there's all kinds of weird things you can kind of get in there and get kind of like, kind of, I guess, elbow deep in.
I mean, and you mentioned a lot of those like demographic things, which are great, right? Because you could go so much deeper, like you said, than like 18 to 35 male. Another thing that actually I learned so much about, and I always found this really fascinating, is when building personas, also diving into the psychographics as well. There's an art and a science to it, right? I mean, it's the same reason why they end up doing focus groups and things like that, because it allows you to get those like tidbits of information that you otherwise couldn't have just from like looking at data. But it's taking the data, which could be the demographics, it could be statistics, what have you, and also taking a look at things like deep listening, essentially finding the places where you believe that they live, at the very least you believe they live. And Reddit is a really great place to start for this, because you could go onto subreddits for very specific topics.
A
You
lot of
also,
them.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. With B2B, I'd say this can be a little bit more challenging, because there's not necessarily, even if there is like a very specific subreddit for, say, whatever the, like, I don't know, the role, if it's like a C-suite in a certain industry, what have you, they might not necessarily be having those exact conversations. You got to get a little bit more imaginative of that. You go on certain subreddits and start doing deep dives and literally start gathering. Like I've done this a million times. I love to go and gather a million different quotes that you feel like it's like emotion based. Like it's where you're like, okay, this person has a problem that this product or service can actually solve. And I think that's a really, really great place to start. Off of that, too, if you want to get really, really specific, you can even go and, you can create surveys and you can try to send them out to people. You could have one-to-one interviews. The data can only tell you so much. That's how you can dive so much deeper. And
Yeah.
that's like a whole field in and of itself,
Yeah.
is all this market research, but it's a great skill set to have.
No, Steph literally took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, if you go to these forums, it's in other words, like find the find out where the problem lies. If you have a client that's saying, hey, we want to go after this demo or whatever, it's like, this is our product. It's like, okay, what problem is this product solving? I've worked with a lot of companies who don't even know what problem they're solving, which is very scary. It's like, what are you guys doing? You just want to start a company for the sake of starting a company kind of thing, and there are a lot of answers when you deep dive, like Steph said, I forget, intense listening. What was the term? I liked it. It was
Like deep listening.
yeah, deep listening. So yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Because you gotta go where the folks are. You're not gonna learn too much from the ivory tower, so to speak.
Yeah, they actually have program. I mean, of course, right? They have like apps and programs for everything, but
Right.
they actually do have programs like, say, if you worked for, like a Fortune 500 company, those marketing departments, like they will have deep listening software and stuff
I'm
where,
sure.
yeah,
Oh, I'm
which
sure.
I'm like, oh, I wish
Yeah,
one day
like $1
goals.
million a year or something.
Oh
That's
yeah,
not.
I'm sure it's insane. It's insane. I mean, they have like these, it's called CDPs, customer data platforms, where like it'll build out personas and stuff for them.
Right.
Again, aspirational things I'd love to
Right.
have in the
Right.
future for rugby. So anyway, okay, so yeah, I think these have been great questions, honestly.
Likewise. Yeah.
Yeah,
Likewise.
very
So
thought provoking.
if you guys want to see how the sausage is made a little bit, sometimes we go into episodes and when me and Steph will both have the question. Sometimes Steph won't have the question. Sometimes I won't have the question. So it's very interesting to see kind of like, like for example, this episode, I'm hearing these questions for the first time, which I think is great because, you always kind of got to save it for the pod, right? It's like, you're going to, like, if we talk about it beforehand, sometimes you overanalyze or over engineer answers. And there have been times where I've had the questions and Steph has never seen it before. So that's a little
Yeah,
kind of
we
bit
keep
fun to
it
find
at
the scenes.
100 raw,
Yeah,
real.
yeah. So, but it's always a blast. It's always a blast for sure.
Unscripted.
Right,
Um,
right.
so, all right. So this question is actually one that I'll give a full disclosure. So Adam at one point was given this question, and I was like, and this was one of those last minute things where we
I'm
were like,
afraid.
okay, what are the questions that we have for this week? And I was like, oh, it's one of those where you put me on the spot and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to remember the names of anything. So that's why I figured I'll ask it this time.
Oh gosh,
All
okay.
right. So what are some resources? So books, could be podcasts,
Oh, you're putting this on me
whatever.
now? What's your pep for you?
Yeah, that you
I'm
would
getting railroaded.
recommend.
Take me to the woodshed right now. No, so what's happening is, you have a great book called Crossing the Chasm. It's something that I was turned on to by one of my former CEOs. You have the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. You have the book Never Split the Difference by Christopher Voss, an FBI negotiator.
Influencer influence people. That's a absolute classic. That's like the sales OG right there.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what else on my bookshelf. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So that's always great. It's funny because when you go through literature and stuff and I'm not a big podcast guy in the marketing space. I listen to podcasts for pleasure, so I don't want to commingle the two, and end up hating podcasts. So it's something where as far as books go, those are the 3 that I would say really check out. Also, like Steph said too, check out the Reddit threads. Some stuff is junk, but some stuff is great. So that's my kind of book recommendation off the top of my head, which I put together a much more comprehensive list, which is not in front of me, obviously. So
you go to r/marketing. You get there is a lot of like garbage, and I mean, I guess I want to say no such thing as a stupid question, but sometimes it's like, I want to start marketing agency, but what is marketing? And I'm like,
yeah,
oh no, I'm like, this is
that's
what
probably
gives
me.
this is this is the stuff that gives us a bad name, like, I mean, we could have a whole episode about this, but
Right,
but anyway, that's not what the question was, so
right.
I won't go too far down it. But yeah, Adam, you're right. Like going on Reddit and literally, I mean, I Google a lot of things. So like, I've had people ask me before. That's why this question can be a tough one for me, because
Mhm.
I read constantly. I'm
Yeah,
always reading. I'm always trying to like soak in new information, but I don't necessarily have one specific go-to source. It's just kind of like an amalgamation of trusted sources that I'm like, okay, yeah, I can like tell this is legit and sort of take it from there. But I will give a couple. The first one is actually someone who I kind of find to be, I don't want to say underrated, because I think people, it's like if you know, you know, but like Seth Godin, in general, he wrote a book called This Is Marketing. He's written quite a few other books, but actually one of my master's courses, I forget which one it was exactly, it was centered around reading this book. It was great because it didn't just like teach you how to market or anything like that, but he was basically dissecting what marketing is today and saying that marketing isn't the same as, when we think of, oh my gosh, what is that? What is that show? Like the classic advertising show. How
oh,
come I
Mad
forget?
Men, Mad
Mad
Men.
Men. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah. See what I mean? I can't be put on the spot thinking of like shows and books that this is what
you put
happened
me
to
on
me.
the spot right now.
Well, you did.
At
Well,
least I
yeah,
had many.
you did
The
it.
best
You had them like ready to
we
rip.
tried. We got through it together.
You had it right. You're right. So that's not what marketing and advertising is anymore. You can't just sell snake oil. Like you can't just like throw $1 billion into something and have it be good. I mean, you could, but it's not going to be authentic. It's not going to last long. And it's just basically the whole book is about authenticity. Kind of what I said before about like doing that deep listening. Don't just like come up with a product and be like, boom, this is product. Now let me find a product market fit.
Right, right,
Find people that find problems that happen
right.
and that are happening in the world. We have so many
100%.
resources to do it, and then build a solution around that. And it's just, it's obviously it's a whole book, but I highly recommend it. And he's just a great resource in general. Just looking into him and what his philosophies of marketing are. Another one, and this is actually a really fun one because you don't hear people talk about these a lot, but an email newsletter that I subscribe to. It's called The Hustle. Adam, I highly recommend it. I'll send you an invitation. And
Please.
what's interesting about it is actually HubSpot purchased The Hustle.
Okay.
And to bring it
Very nice.
even more meta, a podcast that I listened to called My First Million. One of the guys, at least one of them, I think both of them are from HubSpot, but one of them the reason why he's from HubSpot is because he's the one that started the hustle and sold it to HubSpot.
Fair.
So
Hey,
full
that works.
circle moment there.
Hey,
Again,
right.
I love HubSpot, but the hustle it's great. It's not about marketing per se, but it's all these, it's a really quick little tidbits about like what's going on in the business world. And it's a lot of great insights. It's like it's a fun, quick little read, you know?
I like that. Yeah. It's
It's a good one.
digestible. You gotta get to the point. It's cool. Yeah, it sounds like it.
It's a good one.
Cool. Cool.
And yeah, I could think of some other ones like Diary of a CEO was a great podcast, but not
Okay.
so much marketing, but like everything, really everything, but a lot of it is business oriented.
Nice.
Anything
Awesome.
else, Adam? What's you thinking?
Oh no, I'm good. You know, I was gonna say anything by Simon Sinek is always great. We can go on for days
I
about
know,
this.
right?
Like so, just go out there and try and find stuff you like. That's the name of the game, right? You can take me and Steph's recommendations all day. I mean, I think those books again. I'll run back through it. I think How to Win Friends and Influence People. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Crossing the Chasm, and all three of those are my favorite books. So give me a read or give me a list.
Yeah, I gotta, that Crossing the Chasm is the second time I've heard you reference it in a week, so
Right.
It sounds like I have
It's
to.
a wild book. Yeah, it was like
I have to
forced
read
reading,
it.
but I'm happy that I was made to read it. So it's great. Mandatory reading, if you will.
Oh, awesome. Good stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's all for our questions. So I guess that's it for our show. One thing we did not mention yet, of course, is send us over those questions and check us out at Upbeat Growth or all the socials. Also, upbeatgrowth.com. If you want to submit questions, you could send them to the website, upbeatgrowth.com/podcast or at upbeatgrowth, any of the socials, shoot us a DM, what have you. Anything else, Adam?
We might have our first guest next week.
Yes. Oh, is it next week? It's going to be next week, not this week.
Well, we're probably going to shoot it this week and then next week. So
don't tell them that. Don't tell them that.
Yeah, right. These people are smart. They know what's going on.
We're actually about to do it now. Hold on, I'm just going to change my shirt. Let me just change my sweater.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, a little behind the curtain there, but yeah, no, we're excited to attack this individual. Is really cool. We'll just tease it there and pop in next week to check it out.
Awesome. All right, I appreciate you guys for listening. Take care.